The bloggers and influencers that are on Kings Island's media list for press releases and media day events, they're expected to serve, kind of as shills for the park and its communications department. It says so on the content creators policy. What they can't be is us. We've been told as much by not being included on the Kings Island Communications Directors list. Hello, everybody. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
And meaning this more than ever, this is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are and that's who we care about. And Don, before you say anything, for the first time ever, we're going to enter the No Shill Zone. Okay. So we're going to take this episode to kind of explain our stance with this stuff because, especially in the comments, it seems like there are a lot of people that respect our opinion, and there are a lot of people that, well, and I wouldn't say a lot of people. There's a loud minority of people that anytime we say anything negative, they attack us personally and stuff. And if you want to do that, that's fine. It's the internet. We've been around. We get it. But so Don, let's kind of discuss, we came up with the tagline by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans. What does that mean to you when it comes to the podcast?
What it means to us is that, we're going to be genuine and authentic with what we're talking about. Let's be honest, not everything, is going to be the best thing ever, and sometimes you see some of these, people that are on their list. And every time they do anything, it's, this is going to be the best this or ever. That's the best hot dog ever. That's the best, and it's really not that way. And what we want it to be is, credible. And the only way to be credible, especially if you're a journalist, is you have to have, your integrity intact. You have to be able to share your insights, your honest opinion. And sometimes those critiques, they might sting a little bit, especially if you are someone that works, at the park. They're all passionate, they take everything, serious. And sometimes if anything is said that's, less than, highly positive, they take offense to it. There's a little knee-jerk reaction to some things. And sometimes it's, you got to look at what you and I talk about and sometimes maybe use it as a way to get better. Sometimes instead of, being upset about something, we did an episode about Grand Carnival, and, we know that they weren't happy that, we asked our audience, you, the park fans who were experiencing this event, especially, with what was happening last year with all the budget cuts, did you see it as grand or did you see it as bland? Fair question, right? And we got responses both ways. The tasting cards. Why didn't they have tasting cards? That was a question everybody wanted to know. We were going to dance around that. So we asked, why not? What that was doing to the overall experience for everybody. I did a blog recently on themeparksbydon.com about the new, water park attractions that are going in next year. I said, nice, exciting, going to be fun for the people that experience it. But if they were hoping to attract visitors from outside of, Cincinnati and Dayton to come specifically, for the water park, that's not going to get it done when there's a park 3 hours away that has not one, not two, but three water slides that are over 1,700 feet long. And this one's 500 feet. So when we do things like that, sometimes people feel we're attacking the park, but we're not. What we do, Ryan, is it's, what I'll call fair and frank critiques of Kings Island. And sometimes I think people need to separate what is complaining or what is attacking or what is just slamming or bashing from what's a fair and frank critique of something. So we're not trying to, tear apart the park or anything. We're just giving our, our genuine, honest thoughts on things that, you and I have a wealth of experience, going to theme parks. You've been around to a lot of parks. I've been around to a lot of parks. I worked in the industry for 17 years. So there's a lot of things, when things, we know what great looks like. We know what it's supposed to be. And sometimes when it's not, we're not going to say it is when it isn't, because it is, as you said, a no shill zone on tower topics.
Yeah. I think that the main thing that's kind of perpetuating this forward, because I really feel like we we had like a baseline kind of like trying to be positive thing for a while, but with the content creator policy, when they're trying to strong arm people saying like, if you make the park, if you put the park in a negative light, then you're not invited to our media day. We weren't invited anyway, and if we were invited, we would decline, to be fair.
Yeah.
So if anything, it's like, well, if the thing that they're holding us over, it's kind of like, threatening to throw a sack of feathers at somebody. It's like, well, I wasn't going to do the thing, but now that you're threatening me, I'm going to do the thing.
But here's
But I'm
yes,
not saying. Well,
yeah.
okay, let me finish my thought though. But
Okay.
like, I don't think I'm not trying to suggest that like we're more negative now than we were just a few weeks ago, but I feel like maybe the filters come off a little bit more because a lot of other people, like, let's be honest, our
Mm.
competition, whatever you want to define as our competition, if they want to comply by these standards for the sake of a free meal on media day or getting to ride Snoopy soapbox racers at 4 in the morning, they have to sacrifice their integrity to do so. We're not going to do that,
No, and
so let's
like you
run
and I
with
have
it.
said, yeah, like you and I have said, since that policy is out there in public, who's to believe what any of those people invited? And there's a lot of good people on those lists that get invited to this, but who's to believe what they're writing about, because they're going to be seen as these shills for the park and only writing these positive reviews. And even if they personally don't think so, they feel like they're obligated, like they have to
Mm-hmm.
do this in order to stay on the park's good side. And those media days, those invites and things, that's not worth your credibility and your integrity. As a journalist, as a blogger, as a content creator, you're only as good as your credibility in that. And if you get seen as just being someone that's just writing this stuff or creating this content in this kind of fashion just so you can attend those media days and be one of the first to ride something, no one's going to put any credibility in what you're saying about it. So there's nothing wrong with saying, I enjoyed the ride. It's not my favorite ride here, but I enjoyed it. You don't
Or
have to. Yeah.
I like this, but this could have been better. I didn't like that. This was okay. Like, it's okay to have opinions, but I think that somebody defined this perfectly long before this content creator policy came out, and it was with Top Thrill 2's media day, because Top Thrill 2's media day was the epitome of what the content creator policy as it ended up becoming, because it was very selective as to who got to go, and it was based on who Tony was upset with at that moment. And I distinctly remember in one of the Facebook groups, somebody, like one of the admins, posted, or maybe it wasn't an admin, maybe it was just a person, but they were like, I just found out that I get to go to Top Thrill 2's media day. I had to promise I wouldn't post any photos in this group because I was invited for this other thing. But after it opens, I can post the photos. It's like, how do you conduct business that way? Like, why wouldn't you want this person to use all of their influence, regardless of what Facebook group these photos go
Right.
into? But unfortunately, the entire chain has bought into it. And really, unfortunately, some weak egoed people that are at our favorite park have really bought into it. But that just, that puts the ball in our court,
Well,
because
let's put ourselves. If you're in that chair, you're in the PR chair, director of communications type position. And I know this from my own experience with it. You're not always going to like what's out there. You're going to take some things personal, but you can't let personal feelings decide who should come to a media day, who can't. You got to be a pro, and you got to do what's best for your park. And if you've got influencers out there that have a wide reach, are well connected within the community, your fan base and stuff. Tower Topics, we reach a lot of people. themeparksbydon.com reaches a lot of people. My personal Facebook pages reaches a lot of people. So by not sending us information, that is not helping the park. It's hurting the park, because you and I then, because we did not get the information that the park, how they painted the picture of this new attraction or whatever it may be, new food item, whatever it may be, because we were excluded from that list, then what you and I have to work with is what people are saying on the Facebook group, what people are saying on KI Central, what you and I find from just doing different Google searches about it, where other things come up, which, now we got something to compare what they're doing to, something similar. So then you create a situation where it goes a little bit further away from, maybe what the park would have wanted us to talk about, because they didn't include us. But we're we're being fair and frank with our critiques. But the thing would be, my advice to them would be, help us help you.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, if you're listening, we have no intention to adhere to your creative policy. But with that being said, right, yeah, it's no shill zone, people. It's against the law. But with that being said, if the park was able to convey the narrative of the water coaster, then that would have been the story. Since Don, let's call him a theme park journalist. Let's boost up his ego for a moment. But
that's what it says in my bio on X.
Right. But so all he can do is formulate his own story based on what people are saying. This wouldn't have been the narrative. I'm not saying that you did this by any means as a way of revenge or anything like that, but you need to find the story.
No, and it does say it'll delight families and thrill seekers alike. And I say in the article that it's fun. It's a great addition. We said in an episode a couple of weeks ago when they announced this that it's an excellent addition, with what they're doing. But I said, however, as impressive as these additions are, they may not be enough to draw serious water park enthusiasts from beyond the local market. Now, what part of that is negative? That is a fact. That is reality. That is a fair and frank critique of what they did. But we get blasted for that because, you're negative toward the park. No, I'm not. It's fair and frank.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's the job of the communications department, of the marketing department, as they used to have, to get people hyped up, to paint the picture. And honestly, to their credit, the teaser video that they did, that I guess I assume it was Elizabeth who made that and was in it, was very good. Like, that was as good as it gets, because it told you nothing but just enough to kind of like, okay, something racing and it's at the water park. That was beautifully done. So hats off to you, Elizabeth, if you're listening. That was perfect. But, when it comes to the actual announcement, when it's on social media and stuff like that, you go digging for the story, and then the story ends up being people saying like, well, Holiday Worlds is probably better. That's what the story is when you go digging for it.
Yeah. You got to be in a position, you help yourself control the narrative when you involve the people who can help you control the narrative.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to bring us into the No Shill Zone momentarily today. And I know this is not our typical podcast.
It is not. And again, we are, big fans of Kings Island. I really feel that I can say, I've been going to the park since 1972, that, I'm the biggest fan. I always have been, always will be, big advocate for the park. There's an opportunity there, if I wanted to be like that, I could, but I'm not, because I am, I'll put myself up there as the biggest fan that Kings Island has. And like I said, some stuff is just, it's fair and it's frank. And that's my role now as a theme park journalist, as a podcast host. That's our role. If you are If we were broadcasters for a baseball game, our job is to call what's happening on the field, right? You got to paint that picture for everybody, and that's what we do.
Yeah, and I would challenge you, especially people within the park that might have a problem with some of the things that are said on this podcast. First of all, we have an open door policy. If ever anything that's said on here by me or by Don you feel as though is misrepresented or unfair, let us know, because we will absolutely address it. And I'm not saying we're going to be like sour grapes and make fun of you. If somebody wants to come on and dispute us, or if you want to respond to something, that's totally there. But also, if you listen to the 150 or so episodes we have, like line by line, it's 98% positive.
Yeah.
It's 2% negative.
Yeah, and most of the people that work at the park, Ryan, they do enjoy the podcast. The ones that listen to it, and sometimes they learn things about the park that they didn't know. I've had several, of them tell me when they've seen me at the park that they really enjoy the history part of it.
Yeah,
that they didn't grow up at the park, but they work there. They love it and they want to know more. So they appreciate that we do those episodes about history and different things. So, like we're not shills, we're still advocates for the park.
Sure. Now, let me ask the audience, because we try to have the interaction with the comments, and we're really going to get blasted for this one. But so where do you want, first of all, where do you see this podcast in terms of, do you think that it's like fair and balanced, or do you think it's overly negative or overly positive? Like, where would you put it? And where do you want to see it? Do you want to see more content that's positive? I'm not necessarily saying, like, do you want us to shill? We're not going to do that. But, I mean, if we wanted to adopt if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all policy, where we could have done it, Grand Carnival versus Bland Carnival. I think it was pretty objective. But we could have said our top 5 favorite things about Grand Carnival. That would have been a more positive episode, and also would have maintained journalistic integrity. But I don't think that would have painted as good of a story. But you guys are the audience. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below with this.
Yeah, and you and I have both had a number of people that tell us how much they enjoy the podcast because, we are, more candid and honest and straightforward and not shilling for the park. And that's why they like our podcast over other, things that are out there that they see.
Yeah. Very, I get a lot of feedback about the history ones. People really like that. The ones that perform the best, by the way, are the commentary ones, when we're talking about hypotheticals and stuff. And then that's where we get, I guess for us, it's like 60 to 100 comments of that would never happen. Like the most recent podcast that dropped today as of this recording is, what if Six Flags were to sell Kings Island, or will Kings Island always be a Six Flags park? And like, for those of you who didn't listen to it, we're talking about, like, these are the scenarios where we think that it might be possible. And we make it kind of narrow as to what they would do, but we still get people that clearly didn't read the book before they did the book report, and they're like, that would never happen. That's a cash cow. And it's like, yes, we took that into account when we...
You know what's interesting about people who say that will never happen? It'll never happen till it happens, right?
Well, never is a very long time.
That's right. So things
as somebody
do happen.
pointed out, with ever being too long of a time period in the comments, which, to be fair, they are correct, because Kings Island, well, no, it was always is too long of a time to predict. Now, the content of the podcast was in the next 5 to 10 years, but to be fair, I did title it, will Kings Island always be a Six Flags park? The answer is almost certainly no, because always is a very long time. Will Kings Island exist in 300 years? I sure hope so. If it doesn't, it's not a Six Flags park anymore.
Well, in 300 years, we know at least the Grand Carousel will still be operating.
If they continue to take care of it, yeah. Cool. All right.
No, actually, no, we do appreciate all of our listeners and that. We really do want your feedback, and let us know, and if you think we're, too much this, too much that, let us know. And that's how Ryan and I are going to get better with this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, feel free to leave your opinion. We're just two dudes, your opinion is absolutely as good as ours. So if you think we're wrong, if you think we're right, if you think we're idiots, if you think we're geniuses, we want to hear your opinion too. I try to go through and, a lot of people kind of make benign comments, but if people make like actual arguments and stuff, I'll typically go through and respond to them. And, counter what they say or agree with them, or or clarify our position on something. So
Yeah, and Ryan and I are pros. We can take the heat.
Yeah, if you can't take the heat.
I during my days as a broadcaster in professional hockey, I mean, you'd get different fans would always have their opinion on how you called the game. Some thought you were a homer. Some thought you were negative about the home team. I mean, you're talking about the same game they just listened to, and you get different perspectives on that depending on what the passion level is and all that. So, used to it.
One thing that you have to understand as a sports professional and a theme park professional, and probably in a lot of entertainment aspects, is that what you're seeing most of the time is people being passionate. And it's not about you or what you said or anything like that. It's just that emotions run high when it comes to your hockey team or your football team or your theme park or whatever. And if somebody goes, it's like with politics too. If somebody tells you they're a member of the other political party, you automatically don't like them in today's world, although you may not even know them. You might align on 99% of things except for one sways them. But yeah, we're never going to be in a situation where we're so unprofessional that if you disagree with us, we block you on Twitter.
No, that's not going to happen.
Like that.
That's not. In fact, I think if everybody agreed with us, we're wasting our time doing this podcast. Actually,
we would find ways to stir up the controversy if people always agreed with us.
Yeah, but you want it to be, you want to hear everybody's. And that's the good thing about it. Again, it is podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans. So we want it to always be about you and involving you.
Yeah. And if you want to prove that you're not a shill when you're at Kings Island, what's a good t-shirt to wear while doing that?
Well, the best t-shirt to wear, and one every Tower Topics fan should have, is a Tower Topics logoed t-shirt. It comes in a Carolina blue, $22. It includes shipping, comes in whatever size you may need. If you're interested, just send us a direct message on our X, which is Tower_Topics, or you can send us a message on our personal channels, or if you're watching on YouTube, send it through there, and we'll send you the QR code once you place your order. Give us your shipping address and everything. The shirt will be out to you in just a matter of days.
Perfect. Don, we should design a No Shills t-shirt. Do you think that would sell? Put in the comments if you would buy it.
Ryan, actually, I mean, after this episode, we don't want to be talking about this kind of stuff anymore. We just want to be us. Do us, right? Do what we do.
Unless we have to.
Yeah, do what we do.
Totally kidding about the No Shills t-shirt, but we do need other t-shirt options. I think that we should sell a Tower Topics t-shirt and an I Hate Tower Topics t-shirt. I think it's fair. There's a t-shirt for everybody. That means everybody
if you want a I Hate Tower Topics t-shirt, we can make that happen for you. Yeah, no problem.
Yep. Still $22 including shipping, and that includes the extra letters of I hate on it. Yeah, that's where they get you, the extra letters. Don, let's move on to the listener questions right after this. Okay. First listener question. This is from Giovanna Lynn C. from Sandusky, Ohio. With the merge of Six Flags and Cedar Fair complete, what other changes might we see in the park next year? Next year's going to be the interesting one, I think.
I think the biggest change you might see is a tightening of the belt at all Cedar Fair parks, because they have to. You've seen the different budget cuts, before the merger was even complete. Things are a little bit tighter right now while they work through some things. It's going to get better, at 26, 27. Things will start moving in a different direction. But I think that might be one of the changes you see next year, is just that there's a little bit more of a tightening of the belt. And what I mean by that is, you might see some theaters dark for a little bit longer periods. Across the chain, you might see not as many new things. Maybe some events might be a little bit shorter run. Instead of 3 weeks, it's 2 weeks, those kind of things. That's the way you still do those things, but that's how you tighten the belt a little bit. It's just to kind of reduce the number of days you're doing something.
Yeah. So that's not the answer they were looking for, I'm sure.
No, it's not.
But as far as things within the park, I think you hit the well. First of all, they're selling Batman stuff, I think, right now, but I don't know if that's necessarily related to the merger, because merchandise stuff can be resold without having like the IPs on the rides and stuff. That's why they have like games that have like South Park characters and all that stuff, even though the park has no affiliation. But I think you'll see a lot more. I mean, what would stop them from having Kings Island Looney Tunes shirt? Like, do you think that I mean, I understand that they don't have Looney Tunes land at all in Kings Island, but if a kid's favorite character is Bugs Bunny, they might want the Bugs Bunny shirt. I mean,
Yeah. One of the other
that's
things
just
I think one of the other things though that would change in the way we're seeing the different parks posting that they're hiring executive chefs.
yes.
I think the culinary experience will be elevated at the legacy Six Flags parks. I think that is one of the things that if you have that all park passport and you're going to these other parks, I think you're going to see the culinary experience elevated there. And I think maybe on the Legacy Theater fair side, you might see some of the technology improve a little bit in some areas. So that would be the things I would say for next year. We do not have a crystal ball though.
We need a crystal ball. Is that in the
We do.
budget? Okay. But yeah, your guess is as good as ours, Giovanna, and hopefully, to be fair, I think that 2024 has turned out to be a way better year than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's been
Now,
a good year.
2023 was a bad year, and I think that it was 50% like, yeah, they were rotating rides and the Prestige Pass stuff was a damper. But honestly, I think that the 2022 hangover was the worst part. The park was at its finest it's been in my lifetime in 2022. And then to go back to like regular schmegular was a tough transition. But
Mm-hmm.
um, we were expecting horrible things in 2024. And it's actually been a pretty decent season, I have to admit.
It has.
Next listener question, Eric C. from Lancaster, Ohio. Do you prefer International Street before the 2019 renovation, or do you like the newer version better? I like the old fountains and trees a lot better than what we have now. I feel like it really lost its charm after the renovation.
Well, I think when you had the old fountains, when you had the way it was set up there, and it was definitely more grand when you entered the park. Now those trees, it took years for those trees to grow to the height and everything that they did when they first opened International Street, 1972 at the park. There weren't any trees going down International Street, so I think give it time with the trees that are there right now. 10 years from now, they're going to be a lot fuller and bigger and kind of remind you of what it looked like, you know, up till 2019. Now, which one do we like better? Um, I'm going to go with what we have right now there at Kings Island because I think it allows the park. The things have changed. You're not just doing regular nighttime shows with fireworks. You're integrating the fountains, into those shows. The choreographed music and all that with what the fountain, does with the dancing and things. So I think from that perspective, it's more versatile. I think it allows you to put on a better nighttime show. So I think even though it's not as grand when you first walk into the park, what it allows you to do, how it enhances the guest experience that way for the nighttime show, I'm going to lean toward how it looks now. What about you, Ryan?
So International Street as a whole is better. And that's mainly because one of the main reasons for, and dispel this if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that one of the main reasons for the International Street renovation was to free up the space to do parades. Like I think Grand Carnival was in mind when they did that. Is that
Yeah, I
correct?
mean, it needed to be a little bit wider. Yeah, it needed to be
Yeah,
wider. And when it first opened, it had sidewalks, down
I
each
know
side,
they should come back. That's so
and it
cool.
was like, and it was a pretty, basically a, one car, lane, in terms of the pavement there that you would walk down. But no,
People
I mean, I
were
think
less fat back then, though. No,
they needed to. I think it was a good idea to widen it. I think you wanted to have a parade route go through there. Like I said, you could do more things, at night with it. You always miss, things that were there before. It's what your first memories of Kings Island, would have been that when you walked in, whether it was in the 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way up to 2019. So yeah, I can see why you'd miss that. But I look at the versatility of it and how it's enhanced the nighttime show.
yes. So for me, the trade off is all worth it for the nighttime show stuff. Now, if I had to have one critique, because I remember when the fountains first came in and stuff, I was like super excited, and then no matter what, I was going to have that response bias kind of thing where um, I was going to love it no matter what. But I would say that if there's one thing that I wish could have been done differently, it's I wish there was more with the fountain. There's a ton of negative space at the front and the back. Um, People are saying it's not as grand now.
No, it's not.
I see an argument for that.
When the pods were going down the center, and you didn't have the big gate in front of it, kind of built up there a little bit. It was a lot more grand than it is right now. But the fact that there is that fencing in front of it, you got the flower bed and everything, it's kind of risen up there. So when it first opened, you'd walk in, and it was just kind of a little curb, and you
Mhm.
saw straight into the fountain there. Now you kind of have to
Yeah.
get up to it. So I think that changed a little bit too. But yeah, I mean, when the pods were coming out, I remember taking pictures and video of that happening, and that was a sad moment for me because that's what I had grown up with. They'd always been there.
Hmm.
But then I was excited, for what it ended up being when the 2019 season opened.
Yeah. Now, the purist in me corrects you and says that the pods were not fully installed until 73, correct? Didn't they just
No,
have the
there were pods.
outsider?
No, there were pods that went down.
But wasn't it something like it wasn't complete? Or I remember seeing photos and the pods look like
They were
substantially
colored different.
different.
They were colored different. They
Is that
weren't.
all it was?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
colored different.
Yeah, but I wish there was more. Some people meant okay. Some people mentioned moving fountains and stuff, and I think that would have been fantastic. The problem though is right now there's always one or two lights that don't work properly, or one or two spouts that don't work properly. Um, so if we're not going to be committed to like that sort of stuff, then having moving would probably get real cheesy real quick if they
Yeah.
didn't or couldn't fix it every single night and so on. But that's a good question, Eric. That's up to everyone's opinion. But if
Mm.
if you're still listening at this point, we want to know: do you like it pre 2019 or post 2019? Last listener question: Carter T from whereabouts unknown. It appears that Ki is quite a bit of land around the Orion plot. Why in the design phase did Ki not go bigger with Orion? Why is Orion nearly 1,300 feet shorter in length than Fury 325? Did Ki/Cedar Fair not want to take any records away from Carowinds? That's a
You
question for
know,
you.
I that doesn't really enter into the conversations. Like, we're not going to make it bigger than this park's ride. That doesn't. It's what's best for the park that it's
Hmm.
going into. And if doing something like Fury 325 would have been the thing to do, then that they would have maybe found a way to do that. This ride was not originally supposed to go to Kings Island. They weren't supposed to get a new coaster that year. It was supposed to go to California's Great America. But when it became available, Kings Island, took it. Not a bottomless pit, so you weren't going to be able to, build something the size and the length of Fury, both for cost, but also where it went. You might think there's a lot of room there to go, but if you added another 1,000 feet of track or something, well, you're going to have to take out some of the beast then, because it runs up pretty close to it,
Hmm.
on that turnaround back there. And then when you're constructing and that, you got to think about putting cranes and everything in there. They went about as far back, as they could with it. I think not every ride's going to be 6,000, 7,000 feet. I mean, you could ask, why isn't Mystic Timbers, longer than 3,200 feet? Why isn't the Racer longer? Why isn't, this ride, bigger? Why aren't there bigger, barrels on Cargo Loco? I mean, why is Soul Spin only, what it is? There's a bigger model. I mean, you could keep going and going and going on those kind of things. But I think for the space where that was going to go, I think that was the length and the height and everything that you had to work with, because there's not as much room there as you might think.
Now, I remember in Evan Poonstengel's book, Kings Island: A Ride Through Time, which I highly recommend. It's a fantastic book about the history of Kings Island. He interviewed Mike Kuntz, the GM of Kings Island, and he said, first of all, fun fact, he said that they had explored the idea of having floorless trains on it, but he said they didn't figure out that they could do the capacity that they wanted to
Right.
do with that. So that's kind of an interesting fact. I didn't know that till I read the book. But he also said that he wanted to make it a giga coaster that was more family friendly, and that was one of the decisions. But I don't think that worked out the way that he thought, because I feel like instead of like having a making a giga coaster that's family friendly is like making a monster truck that's a good first car for a 16-year-old. They just mismatch. So I think as a result of that, and in addition, most certainly the factors that you mentioned, um, as opposed to getting a Giga Coaster, which is supposed to be presumably the ultimate coaster, they got a bigger Diamondback.
Yeah, well,
You
I mean,
know,
it does fall into that classification of a Giga because it does have a 300-foot drop.
no, I'm not arguing that it's not a Giga, but I'm saying like, if you look at Millennium Force and Magnum XL 200, you can debate which one's better, but they're not in the same class of ride.
No, they're not.
Orion and Diamondback feel very similar, and many would argue that Diamondback is the more thrilling of the two.
I'm one of those that feels Diamondback's the better ride as well, Ryan. So I mean, there's more airtime in it, a little more action in that. So yeah, I would prefer Diamondback, but I think the average, the majority of your guests that ride Orion or Diamondback, you know, Diamondback's 230 feet tall. If it was 250, no one's really going to notice the difference of 20 feet when you're going up the lift hill like that. Or if Orion had been 300 feet tall, it does drop 300, but it's 287 feet tall. That extra 13 feet not going to be noticeable by the riders. So sometimes I think people get caught up in the numbers and want to argue just to argue about something. I think
Yeah, yeah.
at the end of the day,
No,
at
no.
the end of the day, it's about the ride experience it delivers. It's not about the height. It's not about the length of the ride. Some of the best roller coasters I've been on, have been 2,500 feet or less. You know, 3,000 feet or less. It doesn't have to be 6,500 feet or more. For it to be fun and thrilling. I'd rather have a lot more action, a lot more going on, and have it nonstop like that, relentless, than have something that's longer, but there's some stretches where just not doing anything.
Yeah, I agree with you. What I'm getting at though is that Orion has a lot of the same feel as Diamondback,
It does.
and,
It does.
and typical Giga coasters showcase their speed a lot more. They're closer
Yeah.
to the ground. They have whipping turns. Look at I-305 is a bad example because from all accounts I've heard that was a failed coaster from a marketing standpoint. But but Millennium Force, Fury, and all them, they all do that. So they've got very distinct feels.
Hmm.
It's a different coaster than a hyper coaster. A hyper coaster
Right.
concentrates on airtime, while a giga coaster concentrates on the speed aspect. Orion is a giga coaster that concentrates on airtime. So I could see, talking to any layperson that's in the park, a lot of them are like, I don't understand why they put in Orion. It's the same thing as Diamondback. Like I really feel like that's a huge consensus amongst plurality of the population.
Yeah, I
Now
mean, Orion didn't do enough different,
it didn't, and I think
and it
that
has less because you don't have the airtime on that.
yeah. Now with that being said, if Orion was like, forget the Giga Hyper thing, but let's say it was a hyper coaster at another park, it would be the best ride in that park.
Yeah,
I mean, it's still a very good ride, but
hyper giga,
Diamond,
whatever it is, it would be the best. You're right. It would be the
yeah,
number one coaster at many parks.
but you're putting yourself up against Diamondback, which in my opinion is a particularly good hyper coaster. That one is special to me, and I know that it's for some people outside of the Kings Island bubble, it's a little polarizing with what I'm saying, but I really feel like that's one of the better ones. I mean, Magnum, Apollo's Chariot, all those, they kind of pale in comparison to Diamondback, in my opinion. So,
Diamondback is the top 10 steel coaster in my book. I mean,
so,
it's it,
so,
it,
but
it really dropped out of that top 10 and was like in the 20s or something like that. Whether it was last year or the year before in the Golden Ticket Awards, and it shouldn't. I mean, it deserves to be in that top 10. It's
it deserves
really
it.
a great ride.
It's such a great ride, and it's great at night. It's great like when there's fog for haunt. It's just so good, and they try to like reinvent the wheel with that. Now, another example that I would give, and this is a perfect example of it done right. So when I first started hearing, and this is right before construction, like maybe right before they started putting shovels in the ground, that they're putting a wooden coaster in Rivertown. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe the rumors. I was like, why would Kings Island ever add a wooden coaster? They're competing with themselves with the Beast. That's insane. Well, I was wrong. Mystic Timbers is a wooden coaster, but it's a completely different experience from the Beast.
Yeah,
Now, if
and
they
the
made it
racer. I mean,
long and through the
it does a lot
woods,
of things
then
different.
yes, it would be a not as good Beast if it was the same thing as the Beast but shorter.
Yeah. No, I mean,
So
I
I
like
think
that there's that variety there between, and that's what you would have hoped would have happened between Diamondback and Orion is have that difference. and how it feels and how it rides and what the experience is than you have, like you have with Mystic Timbers and the Beast. You would hope that would have been the case with Orion and Diamondback, but they're very close, and like you said, a lot of guests feel that way.
Yeah, if you're still listening, and I know 2 or 3 of you are, Orion or Diamondback in the comments down there.
That's right.
Cool. All right. Hey, thanks for sticking with us. I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.